The Seahawks are NFC Championship Game bound, but they're going to have to continue their pursuit of a Super Bowl without their top scoring producer. We'll be breaking down Zach Charbonnet's injury and what it means for Seattle's Lombardi Trophy chances coming up next here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here for our Monday episode by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in, whether you are in nearby North Bend, Washington, or you are tuning in from Bloomington, Indiana. We appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week and helping Locked On Podcast Network become the #1 sports podcast network. The Seahawks are heading to the NFC Championship Game for the first time since January 2015, but they'll be doing so without a key piece on offense. We'll be diving into what Zach Charbonnet's season-ending injury means for the offense and the team as a whole as they push forward, trying to get back to the Super Bowl for the fourth time. We've got a Monday mailbag, and then we're going to take a deep dive. Everything that stood out to us from Saturday's butt whipping of the San Francisco 49ers. All that coming your way here on our latest edition of Locked On Seahawks, which is brought your way by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDINNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now for your lead story here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. The Seahawks are heading to the NFC title game, and they'll be battling the Los Angeles Rams' second straight playoff game that is a grudge match in the best division in the NFL, the NFC West, an opportunity to get back to the Super Bowl. Seattle's going to have to do it, however, without its top touchdown scorer, Zach Charbonnet. Contrary to Mike McDonald's optimism we got after the game on Saturday, he is officially done for the season with a torn ACL, is going to need to have reconstructive knee surgery, and this is a substantial blow. And I know there's plenty of people out there said, well, look, this is a backup running back, but honestly, it's felt like 1A, 1B all season, especially with the way they've been running the ball as of late, averaging over 165 rushing yards per game in their last 4 wins. Rob, this is a substantial loss. There's no question about it. And I think just listening to Mike McDonald speak this morning on his radio show on Seattle Sports 710, this is one of those heart and soul guys for this football team. And he speaks with how he plays. He's a soft-spoken guy, but that his actions are where his words speak loudly. He is going to go out there and he's going to truck guys. He is going to break tackles. He is going to run through guys. He's kind of got that run through your face mask mentality that Marshawn Lynch brought to the equation, and guys feed off of that. So I think just as much as the production you've had, just his style, not having him out there for this game against the Rams. He scored a touchdown in that overtime win a few weeks ago, had some big plays in that game. It is going to be tricky for Seattle to compensate for not having him out there because of how he complements Ken Walker III's style, and the fact that I don't know that Seattle has any other backs on the roster or in the practice squad that's going to be able to offer that same ferocity running the football.
Yeah, I think especially the ferocity running the football aspect of what you just said, Corbin, is very accurate. You are not going to be able to replicate what number 26 brought to the Seahawks in terms of his physicality, in terms of his desire, in terms of his pass protection. He's a reliable receiver out of the backfield. You mentioned the touchdown against the Rams, obviously the famous, or in some people's minds, infamous 2-point conversion. Just the wherewithal and just the respect for the game to pick that football up. There's just so many things that Zach Charbonnet brings to the Seahawks that is larger than the idea that he is quote unquote just a backup running back. We've often talked about the fact that Seattle has one of the best 1-2 punches at the running back position in all of the NFL. And Kenneth Walker III has often been described as kind of the lightning guy, the speed guy. I mean, he's got this kind of almost like a Maserati type of a combination of change of direction, straight line speed. The San Francisco 49ers and surrendering 3 touchdowns to K9 this past weekend. They certainly saw that. But Zack Charbonnet is the one-ton truck. And you used that word yourself just a moment ago in describing the way that Charbonnet plays. Look, the Seahawks have, several qualified running backs that are going to be able to fill in, for Zach Charbonnet. But it's the locker room presence that he provides that I think is going to be a little bit tougher to replace. Your heart's a little heavy just because I don't know that any player better epitomize Seattle's toughness and grit this season than Zach Charbonnet. That said, if there is one position where it does feel like the Seahawks have they're just rich in assets. I do think it's at the running back position. Now, whether it be a Velus Jones, a Cam Akers, a Jacardia Wright, a George Holani, the Seahawks have some talented running backs that they can call upon here. But I don't know that any of those aforementioned backs are going to be able to provide the combination of skills on and off the field that Zach Charbonnet capably provided the Seahawks, not only this season, but since the Seahawks made him a second-round selection a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I want to start with George Holani because right before we started recording this podcast, right before we went live, Mike McDonald currently is speaking with reporters at the VMAC, and he made it clear that George Holani is an option this week. He's been on injured reserve since November 29th with a hamstring injury. They didn't activate him or bring him back to practice last week, and I would think if we're going to have an update on that, it'll be coming tomorrow, early morning Wednesday at the very latest, because they're going to want to get him out there in the practice field. We might even hear about it today later if the Seahawks have an abbreviated practice today. We'll have a chance to see where George Holani potentially fits in. And I would think if Holani is healthy, that is your best fit to bring in because he knows this offense inside and out. And he had 22 carries before he got hurt. So the Seahawks were using him in the run game in more than just garbage time. He scored a touchdown in the first half against Arizona in Week 10. Clint Kubiak's got a lot of faith in him, and he can pass protect. He can catch the football. He is a 3-down back, which the Seahawks are going to need somebody that can do that. Velus Jones is the 4-3 guy that's got the blazing speed, but has less than 20 career carries since he came into the league. He's been a receiver running back hybrid. You can utilize him as kind of a change of pace guy. Cam Akers is the most experienced back, but he hasn't been utilized much as a running back for the last 2.5 years. He hasn't had many carries, so you'd be leaning on early in his career experience rather than what he's done as of late. But he is playing the team that drafted him and initially let him go. So there may be some extra motivation for Cam Akers this week as well. But I'll also throw this out there. They might call in Myles Gaskin again on speed dial. I don't know that he would be a guy they would have playing in this game, but just to get more depth to put on the practice squad. And he played in a game earlier this year, had a couple carries in that game. So there's some names we can throw out there. I think the one thing we know is there's not going to be a Marshawn Lynch returning this time or, Chris Carson coming out of retirement with his neck issue. Like, not going to be seeing any of that stuff. But I would hedge bets right now that George Holani is going to be activated. And Seattle's got Ken Walker III, and that's it right now. So you're going to see 2 of these guys on the roster on Sunday. Well, whether it's going to be Velus Jones and George Holani or George Holani and Cam Akers, or maybe it ends up being Akers and Jones are the 2, and they don't activate George Holani. Maybe all 3 of them are in uniform with some practice squad elevations. So it's going to be fascinating to see how Seattle goes about it. They're going to have to do a by-committee approach, though, Rob, to be able to replace Zach Charbonnet with what he brings to the table. You're going to have to mix and match, and you're going to have to really lean heavy on K9.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I think that a guy like Velus Jones, just the fact that he's a 4-3 speed kind of a guy. Look, we know that Kenneth Walker III has historically struggled with durability himself. So that's why I think that this should not just be thinking about how do you replace Zach Charbonnet. I think you have to be considering what happens if K9 goes down. And not that Velus Jones has any kind of history of being a feature back. To me, that's where you want to look at a more of a Helani or a Cam Akers. They do have more experience in that regard. But Velus Jones was the back that was active for the Seahawks this past weekend against the San Francisco 49ers, number 32. And, this is a player that was as highly regarded as it gets. I mean, he began his college career at USC, went to Tennessee. You mentioned the fact that he was kind of a running back receiver hybrid. He's also got some return ability to him as well. 6 foot, 203 pounder, that really is a dynamic, make you miss kind of a guy. Made some splashy plays for the Seahawks when he got in on late opportunities against, say, the Atlanta Falcons. He made a couple of runs that really jumped out to me, at least. I think that the Seahawks are ultimately going to have to bring in at least 2 of these backs, and I wouldn't be surprised even if there's a third back, because I think that you're going to see Seattle lean on the running game against the Los Angeles Rams, similar to what the Chicago Bears tried to do against LA, and obviously the way that Seattle has run the ball so effectively here for the past month or so in a row, including a victory at Lumen Field against the Rams.
When we come back, we've got to open up the mailbag. We got tons of questions from you, the valued 12s. We'll get to those coming up next here on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Hey guys, the draft picks positions are set aside from the playoff teams, and so many teams are looking for their franchise QB. Ever wish to become a pro quarterback getting drafted first overall by the Raiders? Well, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step right into the cleats of the #1 draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the #1 QB career mode on the mobile app market. And it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. You can sign contracts, train and upgrade yourself, build chemistry and evolve with your teammates, give input to your GM on roster moves, and rise through the ranks to become a pro football legend. You'll deal with all the ups and downs of a QB career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama, and every choice shapes your journey. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and it works 100% offline, perfect for when you want to sneak in a quick game or two on the go. Just head on over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search the Ultimate QB in your app store. And we've got something special just for you guys. Use the promo code Locked On, all caps, in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB, football legend QB1. It's your legacy. This episode's also brought your way by Prize Picks. You and I make tough decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Prize Picks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a whole range of unique stats, whether it's fantasy scores, field goals, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDINNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDINNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. You live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free with the Everydayer Club. Get Locked On Seahawks with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. It's just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonseahawks.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Rob, as we love to do on our Monday shows, going to open up the mailbag, and we are starting with a real fun one here that is coming from Raphael on Blue Sky, and it's specifically for you, Mr. Rang. The question: with the national title game coming tonight, Indiana and Miami, who are a player or two that you are going to be watching that could be potential targets for the Seahawks with their late first round pick? And put late there in bold, since the Seahawks right now look like they're going to absolutely have one of those. They're going to be guaranteed one of the bottom 4 spots in the first round.
Okay, so when I look at the two teams we're talking about here, the Indiana and Miami, obviously the quarterback Fernando Mendoza is very likely to be number 1 overall. Other than that, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of first round selections, except for 3 members of the Miami Hurricanes. And, Francis Mayoga, the right tackle, is, I think that he is one of the absolute best players in this entire draft, but he is not going to be available like Mendoza. However, the 2 Miami defensive ends, Ruben Bain Jr. and Akeem Mesidor, both play with the physicality that I think is a terrific match for what Mike McDonald wants for the Seahawks. We all know that this is a unbelievable defense. It seems kind of crazy to be adding another pass rusher, except when you consider that the Boye Mafe, for example, is a free agent. The advancing age of guys like DeMarcus Lawrence and players like that. And speaking of age, Akeem Mesidor is the one that feels like he's most likely to actually be available. And he's older himself. He's 24 years old right now. He will be 25 by the time he suits up for an NFL game. That is counter to the way that John Schneider has done things. But again, when you're selecting as late as possibly number 32 overall, and especially in a draft class like this one, Corbin, that isn't quite as rich, that's where I think that Seattle is going to be willing to invest in relatively early selection, first, second round, on a pass rusher to fortify, just get some new blood at that spot. He plays with the physicality for run support and also is a terrific edge rusher. I promise you will see Ruben Bain Jr. and Akeem Mesidor make some big plays in the national championship game. And I promise you the Seahawks are going to be taking full attention to that as well.
BMCA on X. I thought Jalen Sundell had an enormous game on Saturday. Are we set at center for the future, or do you think John Schneider is looking at that position in the draft? So John Schneider is always looking at everything in the draft, so I'm not going to say that the Seahawks are not looking at center. And it's funny because Sundell gave up the first sack he's given up all year, but you take that play out, he was absolutely destroying San Francisco's front line in the run game. Rashid Shaheed's 30-yard end around, he was 25 yards downfield. As I asked Shaheed after the game, what's it like having buffet bashers that can run like that, and got a good laugh out of him. But I think Sundell is the dude. I think he is their center. I think they finally have got a long-term starter there. And you don't have to rush into looking for somebody else because you've got 2 years of club control more with him at an affordable rate. So Jalen Sundell, to me, is the guy. I could see Seattle maybe with the limited picks they have, if there's a center later in the draft. This is another draft where there's not a lot of great centers anyway in general. So I think Jalen Sundell and heck, Oluwatimi is better than a lot of the options that you're going to have that are going to be there. They've got 2 young players there that are under club control. I don't think center's a position of concern, and it's crazy that I'm saying that after the last decade, but that's where we're at. Tyler Perry here. How much leverage does K9 now have this offseason? How would you address the running back situation? This is a really good question because, Rob, Charbonnet's injury doesn't just impact now with when it happened. There's a very good chance, if not probable chance, he's missing a good chunk of 2026, which I do think makes K9 returning now that much more of a urgency in terms of priority.
I think that it makes it a little bit more likely that Kenneth Walker III is back. I don't know that it necessarily makes it that much more of a priority because, as we talked about in the opening segment, I mean, running back is a position that is relatively easy to find replacements. Look, I mean, no disrespect to Kenneth Walker III and certainly not to Zach Charbonnet either. And this is not a particularly rich running back crop, in my opinion. I think it's average, probably at best. But at the same time, I do feel like that is a position where you can get a quality player. And frankly, for the exact same reason that you just mentioned with Jalen Sundell, I think that Seattle's offensive line deserves an awful lot of credit for why you saw K9 go crazy, why Zach Charbonnet led this team in rushing touchdowns a year ago. I think that if K9 deserves to get paid, he's going to get paid I don't know that it has to be by Seattle. I think that that he deserves a good contract, and I just don't know that that Seattle is going to be willing to forfeit the amount of dollars to bring him back when you're going to have a lot of other very good players who are also going to be looking to get paid. I mentioned before about Boye Mafe. What about Reek Woolen? There's just so many players on Seattle's team that I think are going to be vying for big dollars as well as Kenneth Walker III.
Next question coming from Mitch on Blue Sky. Why is Amari Kite playing over our 2 draft picks that were tackles? And that's referencing Mason Richmond as well as Bryce Cabledew. And first off, Cabledew's been playing guard and center primarily. I don't think Seattle views him as a tackle unless they had an emergency situation. And Mason Richmond, look, this is what we talk about in the pre-draft process a lot, Rob. The 6th and 7th round picks and the undrafted guys, a lot of times there's not really much of a difference, if any, with those players. And it boils down to who meshes best with the coaching staff. And Amari Kite was a 4-star recruit at Alabama. It didn't work out with the Crimson Tide, but he was a 4-star recruit. This was one of the top tackles in the country, and he was pretty darn good at UCF after he transferred there. And maybe he didn't test as well as some of these other guys, but clearly John Benton felt like Amari Kite was the better option, at least right now. And it's been that way really all season. They have late in the year when they've needed a backup, it's been Kite. It hasn't been Richmond. It hasn't been Cabledew. And that doesn't mean that those 2 guys couldn't have bright futures still, but it means right now. And you listen to what Mike McDonald said the other night after the game. I asked him about Kite's presence, and it's just the guy's taken every opportunity he's had, and he's capitalized on it. And that's why undrafted guys are successful here. And Mike McDonald has really pushed the envelope. Like, I don't care if we drafted you. I don't care if you're undrafted. You have been the better player. You've progressed better. You're more ready to play right now. We're going to put you in. And what about the block he had on K9's second touchdown run? That was a huge block there by Amari Kite. So if you think that there's any chance they're going to go a different direction, that play showed that they have been rewarded for the faith that they have in Amari Kite. And that doesn't mean that Richmond or Cabledew can't be impact players down the line. But right now, Amari Kite has he's outperformed them. He's earned that opportunity. And the Seahawks, John Benton and company, have awarded him for that. Mike C. from NJ on X, with all the questionable calls coming in these playoff games, could you see coaches being allowed to challenge penalties in the future? Well, Rob, we did that with defensive pass interference a few years back, and it didn't necessarily go very well. It feels like as much as the bad calls stink, that this feels like a can of worms. I don't know that the league wants to open again.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think that it's disappointing because we live in an era now where there's so many camera angles, and they can slow things down. And I think that you can, if you really wanted to, you could make an argument on just about every single snap. If there's going to be a holding, there's often going to be a blocker that is legally downfield, if you want to write things by the letter of the law. And I think that, as you said, open up a can of worms, I think is a good way of putting it. I just think that it's going to create so much argument, and it's going to slow down the natural flow of the football game. So my heart breaks when I see, controversial penalties that wind up having a huge impact on the game. But at the same time, I think that's why it's that much more critical to have guys who are just bigger, stronger, faster, better athletes, like the aforementioned Amari Kite, for example, because you can't leave it up to the referees to dictate who's going to win the game. Win a game 41-6, and no one's going to be criticizing any penalties.
And our next question here, and Rob, this one's for both of us, a good one to finish up the mailbag. Jackson on Blue Sky. Miami, New York, and Atlanta have all hired new head coaches. Is Clint Kubiak going to be in Seattle next season now, in your opinions? I think Clint Kubiak is calling plays for the Seahawks next year. To me, the only job that is still out there that he maybe is in the peripheral to get is the Raiders job, just because they could put him with Fernando Mendoza, who everybody's going to get another chance to see tonight. But I feel like, Atlanta seemed like the hot spot, and them deciding to go a different direction there. I don't think he gets a coaching job this cycle. That's my opinion at this point.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I think that he deserves it. I think that the turnaround we have seen from Seattle, especially along its offensive line, I think that there is so much credit that to the Seahawks coaches and certainly their scouts. Obviously the players as well, but I think that Kubiak is an unbelievably talented coach. As we talked about this before, Corbin, I just don't know that he has that head coaching kind of personality that some teams are looking for, especially in a city like Las Vegas. I just have a hard time imagining that working out for him, as far as that being a great fit for him. Look, I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for all of the Seahawks coaches to get these opportunities. I just have always kind of had the sense that that Clint Kubiak was going to be calling plays, as you said, with the Seahawks this upcoming season, and that there's some out there that maybe want to see him do it again. And just to prove that this is not just a flash in the pan type of a situation, that everything went into, worked out perfectly. I think that Kubiak's track record speaks for itself, and he deserves these opportunities. And so it remains to be seen, because I wasn't expecting to see all the openings that we're seeing. Sean McDermott getting fired just today, for example, to me was a bit of a shocker. And I do think that there could be more opportunities out there for Kubiak, for Adam Durde, for Carl Scott, for a number of the Seahawks coaches to possibly get those promotions. I think they're deserved. And again, if the Seahawks are holding up a Lombardi Trophy when it's all said and done, there is going to be that much more of a renewed push for one of Seattle's coaches to possibly get that opportunity.
When we come back, we're going to take one last look at Seattle's beatdown of the 49ers on Saturday night, 41-6 victory. Monday Musings, all 22 observations. That's going to be coming your way up next year on our Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by FanDuel. We're heading towards championship weekend, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts from your couch, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boost gives you more juice on the bets you already like. Instead of forcing you to bet on something new, you make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Pint and a Pie at the Space Needle is the perfect pregame or pre-funk spot before tonight's game concert. After 4 p.m., the Space Needles Pint and a Pie gives you the whole package: entree, a savory or sweet tip-top pie, and a pint of beer, wine, or a non-alcoholic drink, all for just $35 a person. Minimum purchase of 2 required. Pint and a Pie is your launch pad to game night. Gear up for a cracking home game at Climate Pledge at the Space Needle, Seattle's most iconic destination, not just for the views, but for the evening fun. Rather than trying to cram into a crowded sports bar right before, why not enjoy a little space and a great view while pre-gaming with your favorite cocktail? Create a pre-game story as iconic as the Space Needle itself. Look out over the city, look down at Climate Pledge Arena before you go inside. Toast to the home team, then roll into Climate Pledge with the best pregame story in Seattle. Whether it's a date night, friend night, or you're just here for the deal of it all, come take your place on the horizon with Pint and a Pie. Only $35 per person, limited time offer, 21 and up only, ID required. Get tickets at spaceneedle.com, minimum 2 required. Welcome back to the Monday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm Corbin Smith. He's my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks are NFC Championship Game bound after defeating the 49ers handily, 41-6, a game that, oddly enough, it's weird saying it with this score. I still kind of felt like the 13-3 game where, like, man, they could have scored a few more points than what they did. It was that lopsided, that one-sided. Seattle built a 17-0 lead quickly into the first quarter. Rashid Shaheed getting that started with his kick return on literally the first play from scrimmage when there was still fog from the pregame that was still disappearing. The smoke was still disappearing in the stadium. Just an incredible start to the game, and Seattle just snowballed this game away from the 49ers. Let's get to our weekly Monday musings, Rob. The first time you and I've gotten to reflect on this win for the Seahawks, and I know that you have just been chomping at the bit for the chance to talk about line of scrimmage play on both sides of the ball and how that was the equalizer that made this such an ugly performance.
Well, ugly performance from a 49ers perspective, maybe from a TV viewer, if you were a neutral fan, certainly from a Seahawks perspective. I mean, it was as beautiful as it gets.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that it was the kind of football that I love to watch, because so much of it was the dominance along the line of scrimmage. Look, we spent a fair amount of time, of course, after Thursday's shocking news that Sam Darnold had suffered this oblique injury, kind of fretting about the impact that might have. But when you dominate the line of scrimmage, when you run the ball as effectively as Seattle did, 173 rushing yards, Kenneth Walker, 3 rushing touchdowns in this game, you limit the 49ers, who of course have one of the NFL's elite running backs in Christian McCaffrey, and yeah, it's Brock Purdy who actually led the 49ers with rushing yards against the Seahawks. He had 37 in that game. I just think that it very much was a testament to Seattle's size, physicality, athletic ability, just the cohesion of that they have on both the offensive and defensive lines. And so to me, it was as impressive as it really gets at this stage of the NFL season. I thought that it was a terrific week of football all across the NFL. There were so many closely contested games. And then you had the way that the Seahawks just completely destroyed the 49ers. I thought really was, again, a testament to everybody on board as far as the Seahawks, as well as to the 12s. I think that having gone to that game and been in the stands and listened to just how electric that environment was, that the 49ers didn't have a chance. And I didn't think that was going to be the case. I thought this was going to be a close football game, but Seattle just flexed over and over again in this football game. And I thought that was the biggest reason why Seattle emerged, not just victorious, but dominating this game.
Yeah, both sides of the ball, line of scrimmage, Seattle was dominant from start to finish. I think you have to look at what K9 did in this game, though. I'm going to push back a little bit with what you talked about in the mailbag. I have been kind of in the same viewpoint as you when it comes to Ken Walker III, but now, I'm thinking with Kenny McIntosh coming off an ACL, Zach Charbonnet probably going to miss a chunk of next year because of how late this injury is happening. And I'm seeing Ken Walker III blossom right in front of my eyes in terms of he is finding that happy place where he can still do his, I call it ping pong ball action. He is a ping pong ball back there. I believe it was the first touchdown run that he had. And Tom Brady was talking about it on the TV copy, which I watched that because I wanted to get some insight on what he was thinking there. But that run was designed to go right, and he ping pong balled that one back to the other side. And we've seen him do that a lot of times where it ends up blowing up in his face. But this was a great example where he was trusting his vision. And you had all of that downflow from the 49ers coming from the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. And Walker is so quick that he can make that cut. And it was the perfect read there. And that is the feel of the flow that you have to have when you're running in a zone style offense. And I thought for much of the first half of the season, he was struggling with that. He was not feeling those creases open up. He wasn't trusting his eyes consistently. These last 3 or 4 games, though, coinciding with this team running the football the way they are, averaging over 170 yards a game on the ground the last 4 games, big part of that has been K9 being his best version of himself. We're still seeing those plays where he can create that a lot of guys can't, but he is doing a better job of trusting his vision when he makes those decisions and utilizes athleticism. And then there were plenty of times where we saw him just take what was given to him and get the yardage. He didn't have the negative plays that have plagued him at times. where he's made some questionable decisions with his route as far as running the football. I think Ken Walker III right now is making a very strong case for John Schneider to open up because I think the run game, you're seeing how important it is to Seattle. If you're not going to have Charbonnet healthy for a good chunk of next year, I think you look at this draft class, I think it's a terrible running back draft class, to be honest with you. We went from having a historic one last year. There's a few good guys in this class, but it's not one that I like very much. I am more willing to consider the possibility of making a move there because I'm seeing a guy that's really growing in this offense right now.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. I just want to see him keep it up. That's the thing. You got potentially 2 more football games here. If he can prove that, that he can be the true bell cow. I mean, Seattle has kind of saved him for this opportunity. If he can finish the season as splashy as he was against the 49ers, there's no question Seattle should open up the checkbook to bring him back because he was spectacular against the 49ers. I'll talk about somebody else who was spectacular, and that was Rashid Shaheed. Anybody who watched the game, you mentioned the 95-yard kickoff return touchdown that basically just put 49ers fans back into their seat, mouths shut. They were pretty damn loud walking through Lumen Field if you were there and listening to that. Maybe if you're just watching on the screen, and that bright red obviously stands up in that sea of blue out there, but they were silenced immediately with that kickoff return. And it's funny because Rashid Shaheed didn't get a single catch against the 49ers. He had the 2 runs for a total of 27 yards in this game. And the same thing against the LA Rams a couple of weeks ago. He wasn't very effective there. He's had, you look at the Rams game a couple of weeks ago and then the 49ers game, he has 1 catch for a combined 2 yards over those 2 games. And yet he had arguably 2 of the biggest plays, obviously, in the 2 returns for touchdowns that basically just completely transformed the game. I think that the acquisition of Rashid Shaheed basically is the masterstroke that almost guarantees that John Schneider is going to get Executive of the Year. Everybody has talked about the draft class. Everybody has talked about Sam Darnold and, the way that the offensive line has went from being a weakness to arguably the team's greatest strength on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think enough credit is going to Schneider for just the willingness to peddle a mid-round selection, for a player that is a perfect fit for what the Seahawks actually need. They needed a speed threat. They didn't need a big name wide receiver necessarily because they already have that, of course, in JSN. But with Rashid Shaheed, he is playing that Percy Harvin role as being the speed threat, being the threat on reverses, and obviously on special teams as well. It's not overpaying for a player that may be a bit of a concern. He's going to want the ball. It's going to throw off the entire offense. Instead, it is the perfect complement to what the Seahawks already have and already had, Again, I think that Rashid Shaheed and his impact on the game is impact on the Seahawks' success so far this season. It really has been one of the most underrated elements. And I think it should be one of the most overrated elements because I think that everybody should be talking about number 22.
Yeah, well, I think after what he's done in some of these big games, it's going to start turning that way with the just impact, the roadrunner plays that this guy seems to turn in. I'm going to wrap up my discussion here. I know there's going to be some listeners that might hear this sentence and think, okay, Corbin, you are diving into hyperbole here. But I'm going to tell you why I'm not. Devin Witherspoon and Nick Emanwari, I think you are bearing witness right now to a new era of defense that is being played in the National Football League, in part because Mike Macdonald is able to do things with those 2 players I just mentioned that other teams are going to have a very, very difficult time replicating. Spoon and Emanwari, the things that you can do moving them around, and it's crazy when you talk about these 2 guys, they're such different builds. Devin Witherspoon's 185 pounds soaking wet, but he plays like he's 230. And Nick Emanwari, at his size, he plays every bit that size with the 4.32 speed. Witherspoon with that tenacious physicality and the clear passion for the game. Both these guys, you can see it with the way that they play. They love playing the game. You could move them all over the place. And the amount of versatility those 2 players by themselves, what it creates for this entire defense to just be able to dictate things. And I talked about it earlier in the year. Now it has really started to come full circle here in terms of Mike Macdonald. He's just scratching the surface of some stuff he can do, but having these two players that he can move around, it has made this defense so darn difficult to move the football against, because quarterbacks don't know where certain guys are going to be lining up. They don't, you don't have substitutions coming in left and right for different personnel groupings. It just puts an incredible amount of stress on the opponent. And there's going to be teams out there that are going to try to replicate this, but like, good luck finding another 6'4", 230-pound safety that runs in the low 4.3s. Devin Witherspoon, there's a lot of 185-pound corners. Good luck finding ones, though, that hit the way that he does and play the game the way that he does. So I think we've got a new era of defense that is being ushered in right now in the NFL. Mike Macdonald's ushering it in, and it's unique talents that perfectly fit what he does. We are seeing it. Now they get a chance to have a much better performance than the last time against the LA Rams in the NFC Championship game. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, it's Tell the Truth Tuesday and a deep dive into Seahawks Rams gearing up for their grudge match, NFC Championship style. That'll be coming your way tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Make sure to listen in and enjoy the rest of your Monday. Go Hawks.